Well, back at home, and Australians are likely to head to the polls none the wiser about either side's of politics' 2035 climate target. The Climate Change Authority has signalled it will delay providing its advice to the government to assess the impact of Donald Trump's presidency. Joining me now is the Assistant Minister for the Future Made in Australia, Tim Ayres. Tim, thanks for joining us in this Christmas week. Do you think it's really fair that voters are going to be in the dark about what the 2035 target will be?
Well, the government will set the target in the normal way, following the report and the analysis that will be done by the Climate Change Authority. That is normal, and that means an analysis of what's occurring in the international environment. It's our job as the government to set targets that achieve the objectives in terms of our international competitiveness. In terms of making sure that we're putting Australian manufacturing in the box seat for investment, that we're dragging in the right kind of investment into low-cost and reliable energy in our energy market. That is the purpose of setting the targets. It's not a window dressing exercise. It is a deep policy exercise that is relevant for future costs for households and business, and we won't be rushing into it.
But a cynic might look at this and say, well, how convenient all of a sudden with an election around the horizon, Matt Keane, in charge of the CCA, decides he needs more time, and that means we won't have to come to what could be a potentially politically difficult decision for Labor ahead of the next election.
Well, you'd have to be pretty cynical. It's the right thing to do in the national interest to do this in a measured kind of way, because that's how we put Australian manufacturers in the strongest possible position. That's how we ensure that household bills, that we're providing low cost and reliable energy. It's a big contrast to Peter Dutton's approach, which is to announce a $600 billion nuclear program without any of the costings being properly done. Can he assure Australian households that their bills will be lower when he puts the most expensive form of power into the system? What's his message for the 1 in 3 Australian households who have solar on their roofs? What's his message to them about how he will compensate them for income losses and increased bills that they will experience? What's his message about how's he gone about the business of ensuring that he's properly factored in the cost of compulsorily acquiring 7 coal-fired power stations, the sites of those power stations? What's his message about the manufacturing plans that have been put in place by those businesses? In Liddell, of course, there is a solar manufacturing facility going in there that will employ more people than the Liddell power station ever employed. What's his message for them? The list goes on, Trudy, of uncertainty, additional cost, $1,200 per household per year. He's got no answer on, all of these nuclear power stations being built in the Western world have all run tens of billions of dollars over cost, have all run more than 10 years over schedule. He's got no answer about what happens when our coal-fired power stations stop functioning and there is an energy supply gap, what that means in national security and cost terms for households and for business. He's got no answers on these questions. He's focused instead on the political fix. The idea that this guy who can't deliver a reshuffle on time, he keeps promising that the reshuffle coming around the corner, basic test for any leader, can't deliver it, kicked it off to next year and the never. The idea that this bloke could deliver the most complex engineering undertaking ever undertaken by Australians is total nonsense.
You're the point person, it seems to me, at the moment for criticising Peter Dutton's nuclear policy.
Yeah.
Hold on, but is there a risk that as a government you look a little too obsessed with what they're doing? Isn't it going to be more effective for you guys to outline why your approach is better rather than simply, nitpicking on a reshuffle? Do most Australians even realise they were about to have one on the other side?
Well, it's a basic test of leadership. It's a basic test of whether or not this bloke is focused on the national interest and the interests of ordinary Australian households. I think you're right. You asked me a question about our plans in terms of 2035 targets. I've answered it and contrasted it with the absolute schmozzle on the coalition side here that will mean increased costs for Australian households, $1,200 per year. We are getting on with the job in government. Let's focus on $1,200. What that means in terms of costs for ordinary households is $300 or $400 at the end of every quarter in additional bills, and people will have to find that $300 or $400 extra at the end of every quarter, $1,200 a year. This month, just this month, we have knocked $1,200 on average off the HECS bill of 3 million Australians who have a HECS debt. Nurses, teachers, people who've done professional qualifications now have $1,200 on average off their HECS bill. He wants to put $1,200
Tim, when they look at their power bill,
onto their
you promised that it would go down, but it's gone up.
That's the contrast.
So in the mess of an Australian person who's looking at politics and don't look at it in the specifics detail, the promise of $275, I know the government doesn't want to concede it, but bills have gone up, not down, even under the renewables plan.
It's my job and it's your job too, Trudy, to focus on the facts on these things. And you know, and I know, and everybody who's been engaged in this knows that there's been a war in Ukraine. That has had a significant knock-on effect on energy prices in a sustained way around the world, and it's fed into inflation too. There's also been, I think, the impact of 10 years of complete policy inertia. The old Morrison show meant that no electricity generation or transmission fundamentally was built. The only project that started under their government was Snowy 2.0. Now Snowy 2.0 is a hole in the ground and a tunnel and some turbines. It is a massive undertaking, but in engineering terms, it's not the same as a nuclear power station. It started as a $2 billion project when these guys did the same sort of costings exercise that they've done this time, like a short, sharp, political exercise. $2 billion it started. Now it's $12 billion and it's half a decade late.